We begin this episode by acknowledging the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we record and share these stories. We pay our deepest respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all First Nations peoples listening or watching today's episode. We honour those who walked before us, their enduring connection to country, and the stories held in land, sky, and spirit. May we listen with openness and learn with humility. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Beyond the Veil Australia podcast, where history, mystery, and the unexplained collide. From eerie encounters to forgotten histories, from channeled messages to scientific perspectives, we explore phenomena that defy easy explanation. I'm Heather, your guide through the shadows and the host of Beyond the Veil Australia podcast. Together, we'll unravel paranormal events, curious connections, and the questions that refuse to stay quiet. So whether you're a skeptic, a seeker, or somewhere in between, this space is for you. Welcome. Last season, we lifted the veil, but this time, we stepped through. So, the passage is open. What waits beyond is now calling your name. There are places in this world where time doesn't simply pass. It gathers. It thickens. It lingers in the cracks of ancient stone, in the geometry of forgotten monuments, in the silence of chambers carved with impossible precision. Some structures don't just survive history, they defy it. In this episode, the journey moves through those places. The monuments that whisper, the mathematics that shouldn't exist, through the mysteries that refuse to be explained. This is Beyond the Veil Australia podcast, and this is part one of the Ancient Code, the Mysteries of Ancient Structures. Hello everybody and welcome to today's episode. We are going to be doing a bit of a deep dive into some of the ancient structures around the world and some of the mysteries that surround those. Once again, just like to remind everybody, my name's Heather, and thank you for joining me in today's episode. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate a like, a comment, a follow, anything on the social media would be great. Also, if you really enjoy this podcast, again, a like or a comment or sharing this with a friend would be brilliant. It just helps other like-minded paranormal enthusiasts like us have another cool paranormal podcast to sink their teeth into. So, without further ado, welcome and let's begin. The impossible blueprint. Across continents and across millennia, ancient structures rise with a precision that challenges everything that we think we know about early civilization. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the most iconic example, aligned to true north with an accuracy that modern engineers still struggle to replicate. Its base is level to within millimetres. Its proportions echo the golden ratio. And deep inside, the king's chamber resonates at a frequency around 440 hertz, a tone that affects human physiology. Visitors describe strange sensations, a vibration in the chest, sudden waves of emotion, pressure in ears, the feeling of being watched, and, in rare cases, a low hum that seems to rise from the stone itself. Thermal scans in 2015 revealed unexplained heat anomalies, suggesting that hidden chambers or energy concentrations may be responsible. Some researchers believe the pyramid behaves like a resonant instrument, while others argue it functions as a form of ancient technology. But Egypt is only the beginning. In southeastern Turkey lies Göbekli. I hope I've said that right. I've already fucked up pronunciation and we've just started. Göbekli Tape. I'm really sorry if I've butchered that. A site older than agriculture, older than pottery, older than civilization as we define it. Yet its pillars align with the stars. Its carvings encode astronomical events. And one pillar, Pillar 43, appears to depict a comet impact around 10,900 BCE, matching the Younger Dryas event. Workers at the site have reported shadow-like figures moving between the pillars at dusk. Some archaeologists refuse to work there alone. In Peru, the fortress of, oh God, here comes another one, Sacsayhuamán rises with stones weighing up to 200 tons, interlocked so perfectly that not even a razor blade can slip between them. Some fringe researchers propose the liquid stone theory, that the builders used plant-based acids to soften the rock, which is a technique now lost. Locals speak of lights moving along the walls at night. During earthquakes, the stones shift and settle without falling, as if they were designed to breathe with the earth. And in the Sahara, long before the pyramids, Nabta Playa, a prehistoric stone circle, marks solstices with uncanny precision. Across the ancient world, the same intelligence appears, the same precision, the same impossible blueprint. That's really, really interesting when we kind of want to start looking at ancient structures in terms of an actual blueprint. I often find myself thinking about this a lot, and I just feel like I keep going around in circles of just like having a question and then thinking that there's a potential answer, and then it's like it leaves you with more questions after thinking of a plausible process or a plausible explanation for something. And it is interesting. This is probably sort of related to this, kind of not, but I actually this morning watched now look, okay, I'm going to put this out as a disclaimer. I'm obviously in Australia. That's fairly obvious. The one thing I will say that I'm very disappointed in is that some of the most interesting scientific or paranormal or like exploring kind of different things, series and things like that. For example, I will tell you what I watched today. I watched The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. Now, I really like that. I don't know why, it just really fascinates me. Anyway, so coming back to the point about what I'm disappointed in is the fact that the season that is currently being aired in Australia, you know, it's coming out once a week, is the season where it's sort of based in 2023, which is sort of annoying. I mean, I don't know if it's like that elsewhere, but for me, it kind of is like, come on, guys, we're now in 2026 by a couple of weeks, but just hurry the fuck up. I want all of it there that I can just binge on repeat because I just find it so fascinating. But anyway, coming back to the original point of that story. So I was obviously watching this particular season. I don't know if it's season 5 or 6. I think it's season 5. I could be wrong, but basically, what the guys were doing was this particular episode. I think they called it the Cone or something like that. So if you have seen this, you're probably aware of what I'm talking about at this point in time. But basically, there is sort of more concentrated areas of phenomena that the team is always trying to sort of gather more and more information on. And as I've watched over the several seasons that I have seen, is that each time they do a new experiment in this area called the Triangle, and which is directly next to the Mesa, they seem to have more and more teams or technology available at their disposal. So they are picking up a lot more data and information. And so this particular episode, which I found really fascinating because I'd seen a lot of the earlier ones where they'd sort of only just do one particular tool at a time. But in this particular experiment, they had a lot of these tools they've used before, but they put all of them together in one experiment. So it really did give them a lot of shit, right? Like really cool. And what was really fascinating was when they were reviewing all of the data that they captured with all of these different types of tools, one thing that what they can sort of look at and go, well, this is what it looks like. This is what we believe it is. If you look at this from every, 360-degree angle, it looks like a cone. And then they kind of just did like a diagram of where they've had activity and how that activity is kind of met at this peak point, which is directly above them, but it would form like a cone, like a big cone around them. And there was something that Travis had said, like, if nobody else has made any kind of discovery like this, like on anything else where it's not just at Skinwalker Ranch, that's huge. And there was something for me, and I don't know if it was just me like having a thought process or if I was actually being given some information. I'm leaning more to I felt like I was being given information, but it's almost like that. We've talked about it in the UAP episodes and potentially in Tools of the Trade episodes as well, where we're maybe just not at a cognitive point to be able to handle a full disclosure, if that makes sense. I know this is a little bit off topic, but it does sort of connect in some way. But the information that I felt was that you're now at a point where you're starting to get the idea that you need multiple points of technology to read our technology, and you're starting to get it. That was the vibe, for a lack of a better term, that was a vibe I was getting, was that we're starting to think about it a bit more and go, well, we can't just have one tool as something to collect all the data while we're doing an experiment. We need to have multiple of the same or similar tools that do slightly different things but can back each other's data up. And I feel like the more that you utilize different things all in one, all in one experiment, the more you're going to start to understand our technology, is kind of that vibe I was getting. So it's, it then kind of made me think about, the ancient code episodes with, we've just talked about the impossible blueprint. Well, is that kind of like an introduction to that? Like, this is our blueprint for our technology. I know it's not quite the same, but there's a link there for me. I mean, you guys might be listening and being like, well, fuck, that makes no sense to me. That's fine. But it was just something that had crossed my mind throughout the day today when I was, getting everything finalized for recording and things like that. It was just it just kind of popped up here and there for me. So I'm just wondering if, particularly while exploring some of these like ancient structures and things like that, was there the crossover where there's a more of a connection with ancient civilizations and the spiritual realm, or the I'm going to say spiritual because I think, again, it comes back to Skinwalker Ranch. They did do an experiment with some Native American drummers at a particular point on the property where they believe that there's something that is remnants of the traditional Native American people of that area, and just some of the phenomena that came up at that point. So, you then look at, ancient civilizations have different depictions of, say, UFOs or UAPs as, for Native American, it's the star people. And, it's in ancient China, it's like different types of dragon gods and, all around the world with different ancient civilizations, they obviously have different depictions of like a spiritual connection. And what if it is that spiritual connection is actually like what we're sort of seeing now with a lot of UAP and UFO phenomena is that it is a higher intelligence that at earlier civilizations could only kind of record as a spiritual connection because they were more deeply connected spiritually than what we probably are today. So, it just got me thinking a lot about like these blueprints. Well, where was it that because they were more interested in connecting with it, that they were able to access the blueprint? And now as we've evolved, I suppose, in terms of, the human race has evolved, obviously, and we've got different tools, we've got technology, we've got all these different things that maybe we're focusing so hard on how to use all these things that we're kind of forgetting that like basic connection of like what ancient civilizations had taught us about spirituality, and that, they were connecting with higher beings that could pass on this knowledge. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things I feel I go round and round and round and round and round with, because it's like an endless pit of why or how, or, it's almost like we've become so focused on one side of it rather than looking at something holistically, potentially. And that maybe as technology is evolving, we're starting to think about it a little bit more broadly, and we're starting to see how things could connect again. I'm not sure. Again, if you're listening or watching, just tell me, like, obviously since we had COVID, has anyone noticed a shift of like pre-COVID times to obviously the pits of hell of COVID, and sort of where we're at now as we're coming out of that and like evolving again? I just wonder if it's maybe that's that pivotal point where it's like we're starting to think about things more broadly. It's not to say that we're fully there yet, but I just wonder if things like that can sometimes play a role in maybe understanding things a little bit better in terms of something like this blueprint. Like the ancient civilizations had connection to something to have the knowledge and the physical know-how of how to do something, we're just talking about like obviously using like a plant-based sort of thing to sort of soften the rock, like those sorts of things we kind of look at and go, that's like uber basic. But when you think about it, it's like, well, it might be uber basic, but it might have been super effective, so it's those sorts of things that I find myself going round and round and round and round, just trying to comprehend. And I think it's probably something that I don't know if we'll ever fully comprehend it. I hope we do. But yeah, I have just found it really fascinating. And so, obviously, technically we're not looking at UAPs specifically in this. There's probably going to be some connection based on what we're kind of looking at. But it was just interesting that I'd happened to see that episode of Skinwalker Ranch this morning, and, just that weird kind of correlation that it was like, oh, well, that's what I'm planning on recording tonight, with ancient structures. And, it's just crazy. I mean, yeah, anyway, there's my little sort of ramble and rant there. But yeah, just really got me thinking a little bit, just that connection with this blueprint. And, the blueprint doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing in terms of a structure. What if it's kind of everything? Spiritual, technology, all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I'm going to sort of pose that as a question. If anybody's got any thoughts, theories, anything that they've sort of had a thought process on, like, I'd really love to hear it, because it is one of those ones where I feel like I could just go off on tangents and still come back and be like, well, fuck the hell, I don't know if that actually works. And then you sort of start it again. So yeah, let me know either in the comments, or you can send me a DM on any of my socials, or you can shoot me an email as well. Like, I'd be really keen to sort of hear if anybody's had thoughts on this sort of thing before, or if it's just me. But without further ado, I think we should probably keep going. Otherwise, we could be here for a very long time. But what we're going to sort of move into is the mathematics they say shouldn't have been known. When examining ancient structures, a pattern emerges, a mathematical fingerprint that spans continents. Pi, the golden ratio, the Pythagorean triangle long before Pythagoras. The Great Pyramid encodes pi in the ratio of its base to height. Angkor Wat encodes the precision of the equinoxes. I'm going to butcher this again, I'm very sorry. Teotihuacan's layout mirrors the solar system. Newgrange aligns perfectly with the winter solstice sunrise. These cultures were supposedly isolated, no shared language, no shared tools, and no shared technology. Yet they built them with the same mathematical vocabulary. Some researchers argue that these structures sit on a geomagnetic hotspot or hotspots, places where the Earth's magnetic field fluctuates. Paranormal investigators have believed that these locations amplify psychic perception. And now we're going to move into ley lines, which we've also covered in Season 1. But ley lines, the invisible pathways connecting sacred sites. They form straight alignments across continents. Some believe they act like energetic highways. Paranormal research at these sites reveals that there are EMF spikes at Stonehenge during solstice. There's unexplained light orbs at Machu Picchu. There's sudden temperature drops inside Newgrange. And EVP recordings inside the Hypogeum of Malta, including chanting in an unknown language. If geometry is actually a frequency, then ancient architecture may have been a form of communication, not just with each other, but with something beyond. Again, it kind of comes back to where I was going off on a tangent and rambling like a crazy person before, was that, it's not just about what's here in this physical, is it something beyond that? And that's what I found interesting with ancient structures. And I have also been guilty of watching Ancient Aliens as well. I found that quite fascinating. I did watch an episode, and it was years ago. And I'd love to find the episode again because I kind of want to have that proper clearer thing in my brain. But there was an episode where they had sort of talked about, I can't remember specifically where these boulders were, but when they kind of took an aerial shot of it, the line work in these boulders was just precise. And, it did come into, well, how were they able to get them so precise at that point of civilization? And it was prior to Pythagoras being even in existence. So it did form a triangle. I do remember that. So I think that's sort of where I was going with these lines being precise, was I think that there was this link to how this set of stones had been erected, sounds like the wrong word, but had come about, and that it matched a lot of what we know now as like part of the Pythagorean theory and like all these different things. And it was just creepy because I remember them saying like this was, hundreds of years before Pythagoras was even in existence, sort of thing. It could have even been longer than that. It's been a long time since I've seen this episode, but I do remember that specific example, that there was, questions around the mathematics of how civilizations structured things at different points in time and long before other mathematical figures had really come forward and created their theories, I suppose, based on what evidence they had. So, it then posed the question about, was there a connection to a more advanced civilization that's not from this place? And it sort of went on. I cannot remember which episode it was, and I'm really bummed because I'm going to have to sit there and try and find it because it did really interest me, actually. And they had talked a bit about monolithic structures and some of these things that were just in modern times we look at and go, what a strange place to have a whatever. And it was really quite fascinating, this particular episode. I'm sure they've covered a lot of these at in multiple episodes, but I do remember that one I had a particular interest in because I was kind of like, what? And a lot of these structures are, they're built around having a specific spiritual or religious meaning, I suppose, for the time. So it's, yeah, there's also that other side where it's kind of like, okay, it just keeps me going around in circles. And I think, oh God, I wish I just could comprehend it in a way that just had it make sense in some way, even if it's not, I don't know. It might be just that you might come across maybe a theory that a scientist or an archaeologist or somebody's put out there. You go, you know what, that actually makes sense to me. Whether that's correct or is it only correct for this instance? Like it just, yeah, I just feel like I keep going round and round and round. But yeah, interesting again with, yeah, I somehow find these random shows and then I somehow get sucked in and then I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But then I also remember I just really like learning about it. And it's almost like challenging yourself to learn something, knowing that you're probably not going to actually have an outcome or a result entirely, because it is such a big, broad area where it's kind of like, well, we know there are certain things that we can kind of go, okay, well, this has been documented in paranormal and this is what scientific researchers believe. And, on different experiments of this over several years with different people doing this particular experiment, this is the same type of phenomena or something that comes up again and again. So, science is about repeatability. So when they're to a degree, yes, there are going to be things that we can kind of go, all right, well, that's somewhat explainable in terms of the scientific idea of the unexplainable, So, yeah, I find myself just going down these rabbit holes and then I kind of hate myself afterwards because I end up more frustrated that I don't have any more answers and I feel like I have more questions. So again, I know I've said that before in different episodes across the time, but yeah, I find things like, particularly with the ley lines, the UAP phenomena, and obviously with the ancient structures, they're the three topics in particular that I felt whilst putting them together. And, because I'd planned out so many different topics that I wanted to cover in this podcast before I'd even started, that I kind of went, I can see where these three are particularly connected. I know that there's obviously other areas that we've covered that also share that kind of intersectionality, but I feel like those three, they're like the triangle. Why am I doing a triangle? Why am I thinking about it as a triangle? Okay, someone needs to give me a theory somehow, because now I feel like I'm going spastic. The other thing that I might just also add, just to bore you even more, and if you're still listening, thanks. If I've pissed you off or bored you, I'm very sorry. I will get there. But I have, so for those watching, you can probably see a little bit of my earrings, maybe. But for those that are obviously just listening on a straight audio platform, it was probably about 12 months ago. I went to a, what do they call them? Psychic fair or something. Oh, I can't remember a specific, but anyway, it usually is like it's something that happens in multiple areas around the state here in Victoria, in different areas. So I went to my local one. It was probably around January last year, actually, or potentially the year before, one of the two. And I actually follow them on TikTok as well. So if you are interested in seeing sort of things that they do, Native American productions. So Red Horse is a Native American elder who does lots of healing and creates jewelry and amulets that are like protective amulets. He does a lot of healing. He does some teachings and things like that. Anyway, at this particular psychic fair thing, I'd gone several times. I'd come to his stall and I'd seen like a beautiful board of all these earrings. And I was like, oh God, why? And I felt drawn to what is with it? The fucking number 3. Don't know what's going on with the number 3. It's fucking weird. But there were 3 sets of earrings that I just kept, I'd go and do a few laps around and check out all the other stalls or whatever. And I'd come back and I'd be like, why the fuck am I coming back? There's 3 sets of earrings. So I associated with them, each pair was associated with a different level of life and knowledge in a feminine way. Now, I don't know a huge amount about Native American culture, but there was a connection for me somehow. I don't know, maybe in a past life. There's a whole story on that I might touch on at some other point. But anyway, coming back to the current story, I'd looked at these 3 pairs of earrings. One pair I looked at and I thought they're really beautiful, but I feel like I associated them with like, I'm going to say late adolescence. So like maybe from about 16 to maybe 25, right? Like that, I'm going to say late adolescence, very early adulthood. So it was that you're coming from childhood into womanhood, right? And I'm like, well, at the time I was like 30. Oh, what am I now? 34. Okay. So early 30. I was past then, right? Let's just put it that way. The second pair I looked at, which is actually the pair that I'm wearing, I associated with woman being mother and passing on knowledge to her children. So you're now at that. You're not, you're sort of in motherhood of teaching, right? That was sort of the connection I felt. I'm like, okay, really pretty. And then the third pair I looked at and I sort of got that you're still in motherhood, but you're probably starting to transition into grandparenthood. Maybe not, like super, super late. Like you're starting to transition from, young motherhood and teachings of children to, maybe I associated it with grandmotherhood because it kind of helped me piece it together. But it's that you're at sort of at that top part of the generation of knowledge keepers that can start continuing the wisdom coming through the lines again. And so I even said this to the lady that was at the stall, and she goes, what's really funny? I actually agree with you. For some reason, as you've described those, I agree. I think you've nailed it. And I said, well, for where I'm at in my life, I would have to go for motherhood and da-da-da-da-da. And she goes, yep, cool. Well, we'll grab those. And so I know that anytime I wear them, which I haven't worn them for a while, but anytime I wear them, I feel very spiritually connected to my spirit guides, to my ancestors, to parts of me in my past lives, all those sorts of things. I feel very grounded, and I actually found that, and it might sound really fucking dumb, but when my kids, and they were quite little at the time, like they're still little, but, like littler, if I was getting frustrated and I was just like, oh my God, every parent knows this when your kids are little, and there are just times where you're just like, fuck, I remember one day I put them in at the beginning of the day and I didn't feel that sensation at all through the day. I felt grounded so that I wasn't, and kids will push you to the fucking ends of the earth and your fuse will blow. Like, we're all human. But when I wore these earrings, I felt I didn't get to that. I just felt so much more grounded, more calm, more, even if I've told them 17,000 fucking times to stop being Johnny Knoxville from fucking Jackass, I was still calm and grounded. And then there were days where I didn't wear them and I could feel myself kind of go whoop and escalate. So it's just really strange. It could just be me being a weird person thing, or there's some form of credence to that. Again, I don't know, but I just found it interesting that I wanted to put these in today for the recording. I don't know why. I just felt that I needed to. So it's just strange that, again, I've talked about Skinwalker Ranch and I've talked about different things that are also very connected, to Native American culture. I've got my Native American earrings in. And I do remember that this lady had said all the earrings in this cabinet thing were all handcrafted by Native American elders or women, or, I can't remember specifics, but she's like, across the country. And she's like, we don't actually know specifics of where the beads have come from, or where the earrings have come from specifically, because sometimes they'll have earrings from one I suppose, nation, and then they might have beads from another nation, and somehow it's, potentially they've crossed over and you get, I don't know, there was a spiritual kind of connection in there. But yeah, very interesting. And I have found since I've had them, again, we'll talk about a past life in another episode. We'll get there eventually. But there's a connection there. So, which would also connect with the motherhood thing, not just because of my current where I am, but just for other things. So if you're interested in hearing about that at some point in time, please raise your hand or leave a comment or just tell me, because it is something that would be kind of fun to explore, but we'll get to that at a later point in time. So anyway, kind of coming back to it, I just found it interesting that, yeah, there was that sort of connection there, and there's something to do with the 3, and same thing with the earrings. I kept coming back to 3 earrings. Like there's something about 3. And the other weird thing is I'm pregnant with my 3rd child. Like there's just fucking, what's with the number 3? Fuck. Like something's going on. I don't know. I'm sure in a couple of weeks probably between finishing this recording and even tomorrow, there'll be something that'll pop up and I'll be like, oh, that's what it was. And I'll probably still have little things that'll pop up, several weeks after where I'll be like, oh, 3, like just something about 3. I don't know what it is about 3 today. And it's only kind of popped up now. But anyway, we're going to move on because otherwise we're fucking going to be all over the shop. And I've probably confused the shit out of everyone as it is. So we're going to keep on going. And the weirdest part is we're coming up to segment 3. For fuck's sake. I told you there's something about 3 today. Jesus. All right. Well, we're coming up to segment 3, which is the builders behind the curtain. So let's hope and see how we go with that. And we maybe not get sort of half sidetracked and off on tangents again. Sorry, that's the neurodiversity in me. I just go a bit strange and just keep on going. So I'm getting better at reining it in. It just depends on the topic. Sometimes the topic will keep me out a bit further before I can pull myself back to the point. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. But here we go for segment 3, which is the builders behind the curtain. Who were the architects of this ancient code? Theories range from the grounded to the extraordinary. The lost civilization theory. This is a forgotten culture with advanced and global that was advanced and global, but was wiped out by a cataclysm. Fragments of their knowledge scattered across the world. We've also got the global seafaring theory, a maritime civilization spreading architecture through astronomy and mathematics long before recorded history. The astronomer priesthood theory, and this was a class of sky watchers that were maintaining a global network of knowledge through the universe. The intuitive engineering theory, and this is where we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into. Humans once possessed heightened perception, sensitivity to Earth's magnetic fields, natural psychic abilities, and a sixth sense for geometry and resonance. But there is another possibility, one that sits between science and the paranormal. Across the ancient world, construction wasn't merely engineering. It was ritual. Shamans entered trance states. Priests fasted for days. Builders meditated before placing stones. Communities gathered in ceremony before the first foundation was laid. Accounts were described as visions of structures before they existed, dreams revealing architectural plans, voices guiding placement, and energies that felt not measured. Modern visitors report similar experiences. A researcher at the Hypogeum fainted after hearing a low-frequency hum, later measured at 110 Hz, known to induce altered states in humans. A group meditating at Uluru reported the same vision, a glowing geometric grid beneath the Earth. A visitor to Chichen Itza, again, I've probably butchered that and I'm very sorry, described hearing whispers in a language that they didn't even know, but they somehow understood it. So, were ancient builders accessing a form of intelligence that we've forgotten? Or is it just something we can't explain? Again, it kind of leans into kind of what I've rambled about on and off, but I feel like with this, I have taken probably a slightly more spiritual lens on this, but I think it's because it's one of those ones that there seems to be more documentation of the spiritual sort of connection. Like, yes, there's scientific things, but there's scientific things and they're kind of going, well, hang on, how is this happening? It seems to kind of circle back to a spiritual connection. And so, it's like we were talking about before when, investigators, use particular types of tools and, pioneers that have created these tools and things like that have developed theories about what they believe different things are when they interact with different things and blah, 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 blah. So it's that same sort of thing where it's that repeatability where people can be using this tool and they're getting the same type of experience. It's not to say that it's always the same, but more or less these particular tools can, indicate a particular theory about whatever. So I also just wonder if that's sort of the case here with the lens that I'm sort of leaning into, is because I think science is showing there's repeatability there, but we're still sitting there with this question of like, well, what the fuck is it? Like how, why, when, and again, I think it just comes back. There's just that spiritual part of it's just kind of still sitting there. Like, here I am, I am still connected to this, and that's why the science keeps bringing you back. I don't know. I think that's just where it's like, well, this is sort of the way I've got to go because I feel like this is the direction that I need to go to learn more. Well, to learn a little bit more and then still have fucking 5,000 questions. Anyway, moving into segment 4, which is the paranormal encounters at ancient sites. So this is where the veil thins. At Stonehenge, multiple visitors have reported time slips, moments where the world feels misaligned. Some describe seeing figures in animal skins walking between the stones, only to vanish moments later. At Giza, guards have reported dark silhouettes moving along the causeway at night. Tourists often describe sudden emotional waves inside the Queen's chamber. At Newgrange, researchers captured unexplained beams of light moving across the chamber walls, long after the solstice sunrise had passed. At Machu Picchu, handheld magnetometers show sudden surges near the Temple of the Sun. Visitors report dizziness, deja vu, and overwhelming emotion. EVP evidence includes a rhythmic chanting in the Hypogeum, a whisper resembling Sarah, son of the sun, inside the king's chamber. There's disembodied voices at Chichen Itza. Some believe that these sites store memory. Others think they transmit information. A few whisper that they are portals, not in the science fiction sense, but in the energetic, consciousness shifting sense. So again, that, sorry for those that are listening, you may have heard disturbance on my mic. That was just me knocking it, so I apologise. But that, again, it's sort of, there's this real kind of eeriness where it's like, well, how can that be explained? None other than what we sort of know exists as the paranormal theories, right? Like, it's just interesting. I think there's a lot to be said for, ancient civilizations, and not just their ancient structures, but just, things that were experienced back then that are also being experienced sort of now in a more modern context. It's very interesting. And I guess it comes back to particular sites, obviously it was, some believe that they store memory, others believe that they're transmitting information. Again, we covered this in one of the other episodes where it was that fucking taco ad where it's like, well, why can't it be both? I honestly think, when I was sort of looking at that particular stuff for this segment was, again, it's that same thing of like, well, why can't it be both? Why does it have to be one or the other? It's one thing I've noticed with a lot of the research that I've done across the entirety of this podcast with different topics, particularly with the UAPs, with the ley lines, with different tools and things like that, and the spiritual connections, is that why can't these things actually be both? Why is it that some go, well, it's stone tape theory and it's holding the memory, and others are going, well, it's not that, it's just transmitting information? And I think it's honestly both, because when you think about, probably more so in Egypt, in the pyramids, is that, I mean, it is likely recorded slightly differently, but it's probably more prominent in the pyramids of ancient Egypt. But, what do they call them? Not pyroglyphs, or is it gyroglyphs? I can't fucking remember now. My brain has just completely lost its shit. But petroglyphs, that's it. Fuck, pyroglyphs, you fucking idiot. Sorry, I'm a bit fucking nuts today. Petroglyphs, get it right. Petroglyphs. It's petroglyphs that are telling the stories, right? That's how they record what was going on in their time, Skinwalker Ranch, where they'd had these Native American drummers come out, there was a particular structure. Again, we're sort of talking, it's like it's sort of like a big swirly circle, and it was, from what my understanding is that it's believed to be in the Native American culture of that particular tribe, was that it was sort of like a portal of energy type of thing. And not far from where this particular I suppose structure, for the lack of a better term, was, a bit further down, they actually have petroglyphs there. So it's sort of then depicting a little bit about, this particular portal type of thing. First Nations Australians have had, there's petroglyphs with their storytelling of Dreamtime and things like that. Ancient Egypt, it's definitely 100% everywhere. Like, it's all, it doesn't have to be in the pyramids, it's outside of them too, right? So I think about those particular experiences that have been documented, I suppose, and where some people are going, well, it's stone tape theory because it's holding memory. Yes. And I also think it's transmitting information. Yes. Because if you, not that it's easy to read, but if you're able to kind of look at what symbols are being used to describe different things, you can then start to piece a story. And it's, if we think about like the story about my earrings, it's about the teachings, right? And passing knowledge down and wisdom, that it's sort of like, well, that's their way of recording something and then being able to share it with generations as they come through, and that knowledge is continually shared and passed on. So it is transmitting information, and it's also holding the memory. So to me, it logically, based on my way of thinking, it's both. But I can see, when people are probably far more competent in the full in-depth stuff of this, will probably go, well, no, Heather, you're wrong, because it's just this or it's just that. But based on what my observations are with things and the way my brain processes and thinks about these sorts of things, is it kind of says, well, it's both. And that's fine. I agree to disagree with anyone. If you've got info that you want to share with me, please hit me up. I want to know. Please, if you can help answer some of my 5 billion questions that seem to come up after every time I think about these things, that'd be awesome. But yeah, it's interesting. And then, there's obviously people that think that they're portals, and it's like, well, again, is that also part of the information that's being transmitted? Is it not just about the actual story of the people or of different seasons and all that sort of stuff? Is it actually a portal that not only are these stories trying to tell us about that particular time, but is there a portal there that that story's not actually highlighting? You know, like there's just all these sorts of things that just go round and round and round in my head. And then I go, why do I do this to myself? But yeah, really, really quite fascinating. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said with ancient structures. I think sometimes we do sort of forget about them, and then you might come across an odd documentary like me and you go, oh, that's actually kind of cool. And then you start to do the deep dives, and then you end up like me and you lose your mind about it. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what people think about that so far. Like, have you? Is it an area that you've actually put thought into? Is it an area that you're really interested in, and you've been looking into this and you've got some answers? Like, what are people? I just kind of want to gauge the vibe here. Like, what are people's thoughts about ancient structures? Is it something that you actively seek out? Is it something that you're kind of like, nah, not for me? I'm just curious because I know it took me a while to get into the ancient structures. And then when I started learning a little bit more about them, I was kind of like, fuck, how fascinating. There's a lot of connection here. I know I covered it in the ley lines episode where, again, we've sort of briefly mentioned ley lines in this one, but there seems to be an uncanny connection with, where ley lines are positioned in the world and how they seem to connect from one ancient structure to another. And yeah, just little things like that I kind of go, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. Again, ley lines was another one that didn't really jump out at me until I kind of started connecting a few things and went, there's something here. Yeah, interesting. So I just wonder if are the portals actually the ley lines? I don't know. Quite possibly. But we're now going to look at segment 5, which is the final segment here. It's only very short and sweet. It's called The Code Hidden in Plain Sight. Now, this is an area where I kind of think we could do a bit more of a deep dive into this at another point in time, but let's just see how we go. When mapping the world's ancient structures, something extraordinary happens. Patterns seem to emerge. Ratios seem to repeat. And alignments seem to converge. It's almost as if the ancients were actually leaving a message not in language, but in architecture. A map, a warning, a memory, or a technology that we no longer understand. Perhaps the ancients weren't trying to impress us. Maybe they were just trying to prepare us. So again, like I said, very short and sweet. I really think it would be, it's probably more the ending question rather than a segment, I suppose. But it really, it gets me thinking. Maybe it's not just about kind of going, look at this beautiful thing. Maybe there's something else to it. Maybe it is part of the disclosure. I don't know. Again, another random thought that I have is just like, there's got to be a connection for sure. There just has to be. Or am I trying to look at this too logically? Because as a professional overthinker, sometimes I will, go off on tangents and I really, really try and think about it. And I'll come back to it and go, well, that makes a lot of sense. But then sometimes I think, but it's almost too simple. So is like, again, if you're neurodivergent and you're also a listener or a viewer, I don't know about you, but like chronic overthinker. But I also think because I am able to see patterns a lot, like I'm just able to pick them. Like to me, it's second nature being able to pick up a pattern. I just think I just thought that was something everyone could do. I've recently learned that it's not, but that's okay. But for me, it's being able to see beyond the smoke and mirrors sometimes, but you're able to see so clearly through the smoke and mirrors that you're kind of like, it seems too simple because not everyone else can see between the smoke and mirrors, right? Like I must be having like some kind of neurodivergent spaz out today or something because I can feel my brain going overtime right now. And it is also that, the kids it's still summer in Australia, so we're still on summer holidays. So they have had holiday care in between when I've actually had to go and do my regular big person job. But obviously, on the day that I'm not working, until school goes back, I'm like, nah, they need to ease into like getting back into routine just as much as I do. So, and they're both neurodivergent basically. So it's possible that I'm just a little bit overstimulated from the day with them because yeah. And then I'm kind of trying to get into my zone with all of this. And it's like, oh, bang, here's all these 5,000 things that you've had stored in your brain all day that are like, hey, here's the podcast. We're talking. Let's get it all out there. Sorry, I've just lost my brain completely. But yeah, it's just interesting. Again, I didn't actually think about a lot of this stuff, and I only put my earrings in maybe 10 minutes. I'd set everything up for recording, and I'd only put my earrings in a couple of minutes before I was like, cool, I'm actually coming in and I'm hitting record and away we go. So I just, again, like I've talked about it, you might think I'm a nut job, and that's fine. Today I feel like a bit of a nut job, and that's also fine. But it's just strange that I've had a few things really kind of pop up. And maybe there's that connection there where it's like maybe because I have been a bit overstimulated, and the symbolism for me with these earrings and just all of those things are now starting to like clock over in my brain where I'm just like, duh, you fucking idiot. Yeah, probably should have prepared myself better for that, but never mind. Hopefully the episode isn't too fucked for you all to listen to. Yeah, must have just been one of those things where I was like, cool, I'm ready to go. I'm like cool as a cucumber. I've got this. Let's go for it. And we've ended up on lots of different tangents and random interesting things. So again, there are a lot of things in this, particularly with, some of the blueprint and the mathematics and paranormal side of it that I wanted to kind of hone in on today. But I really think there's a lot of room to kind of do more deep dives in. But again, I think it's one of those, like I said before, sometimes there are certain elements of the paranormal that I feel like a lot of it, you're not going to have like a necessarily an outcome or a result in what you're trying to find. A lot of it, like this, I think is still very open to a big wide world of potential answers that will likely fit, but which ones are the ones that are correct, and I think, yeah, I think that's where the connection is with the ley lines, the UAPs and UFOs and ancient structures, as I feel like they are interconnected in a way where you sort of can't have one without the other, and they're all kind of trying to tell a different story of something bigger. But at what point do we get to the something bigger, and are we ever going to get to that something bigger? I don't know. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm curious to kind of do more deep dives into, but again, sometimes it can be quite limiting with what you're going to get on the other end. You're probably only going to get to a certain point and be like, server 404 not found, like, but nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So again, let's see where we can go with this even more. But I also just wanted to say again, thank you all so much for listening and for joining me again today. I hope that the episode has been somewhat entertaining for you. But yeah, this has only been part 1 of the Ancient Code, the mysteries of ancient structures. In our next episode, the journey continues into the knowledge that ancients shouldn't have had, and the question that haunts every researcher: was it lost knowledge or just a really good guess? I'll let you guys be the judge in part 2 of the Ancient Code. Was it lost knowledge or just a really good guess? Again, thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. The love that I've been getting on social media has been phenomenal. Despite not being able to be as present recently, just with a lot more going on, I'm hoping in a couple more weeks things will kind of settle back into where they should be, and it'll be a little bit easier to kind of keep moving forward. But yeah, thanks again for listening or for watching. If you've enjoyed today's episode, or you have some info for me, or anything that you want to share about this particular topic, I'm really keen to hear about it. You can definitely leave a comment. You can send me a DM on the socials, or you can send me an email at beyondtheveilaustralia@outlook.com. And again, if you like this episode, please like and share, as it does help boost the podcast for other paranormal enthusiasts such as us that may want to have another podcast to sink their teeth into. So, once again, stay curious, stay grounded, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye.